What's up everyone, ThePowerUpMushroom here, and today we're going to be doing a PlayStation 3 buying guide. Now this is a video I've been wanting to do for a long time for people who are looking to buy a PlayStation 3. This is going to be kind of, a beginner's guide, but I'm also going to be including plenty of games in here for everybody, just in case there's any that you guys haven't heard of or you want to check out. Whether it's single player games, online multiplayer games, or just some couch co-op games that you just want to have fun with your friends and family, the PlayStation 3 has something for everyone. While I can't include every single game in the PlayStation 3's library in just one video, I can definitely give you guys some banger recommendations for myself that I believe are must-haves for the system. Now, this video will be broken up into multiple parts in the timestamps below, so feel free to check them out so you can skip to the most useful part of this video for you. But without further ado, let's go ahead and we're going to jump right into this video, starting with the console. You might notice that I have 3 different consoles right here in the front, one being the FAT PlayStation, one being the Slim, and one being the Super Slim. Now the PS3 comes in many shapes and sizes, and I'm just going to get straight to the point. You're going to want one of these bad boys, or get yourself a PlayStation 3 top loader. Now these systems are the most reliable, as older ones like this FAT model here are more prone to the yellow light of death. The only reason you'd ever want one of these is if you're buying the first model PS3s, which are the only ones that are backwards compatible with PS2 games. The way you can tell that these are the original models that can play PS2 games, you'll notice in the front there are 4 USB ports. If that PlayStation 3 has 2 USB ports, more than likely it's not backwards compatible. Just a reminder, if you are looking to get one of these older PlayStation 3 models that can play the PS2 and PS1 games, just mind yourself that these have gone up in pricing due to high demand, and unless you plan on doing some preventative maintenance on this console to prolong its life, I wouldn't buy this model. Now, just to throw this on the table, there are actually some people who don't know, and this is for you guys, that all PlayStation 3 models can play PlayStation 1 games. One more recommendation for myself before you start using your PlayStation 3 console once you buy it is make sure you upgrade the hard drive. Now, if you're buying a PlayStation Slim, majority of the PlayStation Slims, if I remember correctly, come with a 500 gigabyte hard drive already installed. For most people, that is enough. But for me personally, I did go on Amazon and I bought a 1 terabyte hard drive. And let me tell you, it works great. It's useful for me because I've started collecting for the PS3 a lot more than I have any other console. And some of these games do require that you install parts of the game onto your PlayStation 3. Not only that, but with the PlayStation Store possibly closing down in the future, if you want to get the most out of your PlayStation 3, it's probably best that you do buy an upgraded hard drive, just so that way you have a bunch of space to put your games on. That includes downloadable games and arcade games that are on the PlayStation Store, which I will have a separate video for just for you guys. Now, if you do decide to go the route of upgrading your hard drive, just keep in mind that you are going to need a USB with the latest firmware update of a PlayStation 3 on there to format the hard drive properly. I will leave a link in the description below to one of the better videos that helped me do that. It doesn't take too long. I know it sounds like a hassle, but trust me, 5 to 10 minutes of your time working on your PlayStation 3 is very worth it. Now, like I said earlier, the PlayStation 3 has plenty of games out there for everybody. There are even games that still play online. But now let's go ahead and we're going to jump right into the meat of this video, something you guys have been waiting for. Let's talk about the games. I'm going to go ahead and start with some heavy hitters right from the bat, and that is the God of War series. If you have never played God of War, you owe it to yourself to play this game. Now, in the original series, God of War, you play as Kratos, who seeks out revenge against all the Greek gods. And yes, I do mean all of them. It is pretty awesome. If you have not played any of the God of War series, you owe it to yourself to start right here on the PlayStation 3, especially since the PlayStation 3 carries God of War Ascension, the prequel, God of War 1, 2, 3, and Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta, both of which were only exclusive to the PlayStation Portable, and really probably the best way you can play both of those games. Definitely check these games out. If you have heard about this series and you've always put it off, I'm telling you, you owe it to yourself to add these games to your collection. But we have Lair and Untold Legends Dark Kingdom. Lair I have not played personally, but this was one that I know had gotten a lot of criticism at the beginning for just simply being really buggy at launch. Untold Legends Dark Kingdom I did play, I did it as part of a 48-hour video game challenge where I had to play nothing but this game for the next 48 hours. Now, while graphically the game doesn't hold up, it's still somewhat okay. It's very Dungeons and Dragons like. You can play up to 2 players locally. You have your different classes. It's one of the few games out there on the PlayStation 3 that you can pick up with a friend and just play some couch co-op if you guys are sitting around and getting bored. But nonetheless, it's an exclusive experience you can only get on the PlayStation 3, and they only made a couple of those. Sadly, the company or the game studio behind this one shut down, so the online servers do not work currently on this game, and I highly doubt we'll be getting another Untold Legends game anytime soon. Now for this next title, I am going to be getting some help from Spoons, from Gaming with Spoons, to tell you guys all about this banger recommendation.
Heavenly Sword was developed by Ninja Theory and was a launch title for the PlayStation 3. This forgotten action game plays a lot like the PlayStation 2 God of War games, complete with its quick time events and stylized combat. You follow a young girl named Nariko, tasked with guarding the Heavenly Sword, a sword of immense power used by the goddess herself to fight off the Raven King. When King Bohan invades her homeland, Nariko takes up the sword and wields it to fend off his army and save her people, but at the cost of her own life. While Heavenly Sword hasn't aged the greatest in combat and visuals, it's got an engaging story worthy of any PlayStation 3 collector's library. Definitely check out this game.
Now, excuse me while we are going to be speeding this up a little bit, so I am going to be going over a few titles that, hey, you know, they're still in the PlayStation library, and this is the only place you'll be able to play them. First up, we have Genji Days of the Blade, one of the launch titles for the PlayStation 3, along with Golden Axe Beast Rider. These games, while they're not the best games out there for the PlayStation 3, they're definitely ones that a lot of people would want to pick up. Another one would be Demon's Souls. Now, I know that we have a remake of Demon's Souls that came out on the PS5. Demon's Souls on the PS3, while it is old, I do believe it holds up fairly well. Very similar to the way Dark Souls holds up. If you haven't played a Souls game, or you're getting yourself a PS3 and you want to have a mini Souls library, you definitely need to add Demon's Souls to your collection. Now, one interesting thing about the PlayStation 3 is that this is the only console where you can play every single Metal Gear Solid game. If you say Metal Gear Survive is part of the series, you're wrong. I'm talking about the original main entries in the Metal Gear Solid series. This one will cover Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, along with many others, as well as Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, which the PlayStation 3 is the only console you can play this game on. It is definitely a must play if you haven't played Metal Gear Solid 4. Even if you haven't played any of the other games in the series, you can still experience everything Metal Gear has to offer with this game. Well, I do highly recommend that you pick up the entire collection for the console. You can get away with playing Metal Gear Solid 4, and it's definitely a must-have for the collection. Now, next up, I'm going to provide you guys with some online games. These games are ones that you can still play online today. The communities are very active. You can also find their Discord servers, which I will leave a link in the description below to that for you guys. Some of these, you'll notice that their online servers were cut off a few years ago, but thanks to people like PlayStation 1 or PS1, they have revived the servers using a special DNS settings for your console. It doesn't require you to hack your PlayStation 5, but nonetheless, it gives you more stuff to play. And again, online multiplayer on the PlayStation 3. I've played these games. Let's check them out. One of the biggest ones right now that is online and is very active is Red Dead Redemption. Now, you can pick up Red Dead Redemption, the Game of the Year edition, which will include all the DLC. That includes the Undead Nightmare DLC, one of the best DLCs ever made. And Red Dead Redemption Game of the Year edition runs for about $20 online. You can also find them fairly new. Definitely, if you have some friends or you're picking up a PlayStation 3 with a couple of buddies, Red Dead Redemption is probably one of those you are going to want to play online. I don't know how long they're going to keep the servers up, but Rockstar still has them up right now, and the community is fairly active. If you played Red Dead Redemption 2 and you felt like the online multiplayer was lacking, this is one where I would say you might want to check it out, because The online quality for Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2 is almost night and day. There's a lot more stuff to do in Red Dead Redemption 1, a lot more mini games. It definitely captures the feel of the Wild West. It's something that I don't think you guys should pass up on, and if you have a PlayStation 3, pick this one up and do yourself that favor.
Peace.
Civilization is a truly beautiful thing, Mr. Marston.
Well, old man, looks like things is about to get settled once and for all.
So it seems.
Next up, I know we all remember this game. Destiny is still online on the PlayStation 3. I just recently got online just to see if the community was still active. Yeah, there are still people playing it. Now, they did stop DLC support for the game and they no longer update it and do not allow you to buy in-game currency, but there's still quite a few people that just jump into regular online matches like the Crucible. While it's not as populated and it is dying out, you can still nonetheless play Destiny 1 on your PlayStation 3, and I believe that includes DLC all the way up to The Taken King. Next up, we have one of the games that is supported by PS1, a group, like I was saying earlier, that is reviving the online service for the PlayStation 3 slowly but surely. And MotorStorm is one of those games that if you bought a PlayStation 3 at launch, you probably got a launch edition with MotorStorm bundled with it. It's probably one of the best racing games on the console. On top of that, the online is working, again, with the help of PS1. With fairly populated servers, you can definitely find a match here and there using the Discord. MotorStorm is one of those games that I feel that PlayStation just abandoned this series, and it's unfortunate because it was a very unique racing series, mud racing, where you made like race trucks. I think it was a lot of fun, and if you have a PlayStation 3, pick this one up along with Killzone 2. Now, Killzone 3 does not have any working servers at the moment, but Killzone 2 was one of those games where it had a huge multiplayer fan base. Now, if you are a PlayStation owner, this is a must-have. This one right here is one of those games that back in the day, if you had a PlayStation 3, you had Killzone. Killzone 2 had a very healthy fan base for its multiplayer, and right now it is still very healthy, with people going out of the way to change their DNS settings just to play Killzone 2 online. It's probably one of the better multiplayer experiences as far as like a first-person shooter goes on the PlayStation 3. And I'm going to say this with many games on this list, Killzone 2, if you haven't played it, not only does it deliver a very decent campaign, but it delivers a very, very great multiplayer experience, and I highly recommend you check it out. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be what it used to be back in its day where it's overpopulated, but nonetheless, you will be able to experience the multiplayer and its story. So if you get Killzone 2, I recommend you also pick up Killzone 3 to finish off the story. And if you're willing to spend around $40 to $60, you can definitely pick up the Killzone trilogy, which includes Killzone 1, 2, and 3. So you can get the full story experience. While Killzone 1 isn't very story heavy, Killzone 2 and 3 definitely picks it up a notch. And I really hope that one day PlayStation will kind of see what kind of potential the Killzone series holds, and they bring it back for the PlayStation 5.
Hey, those driven to divide us will hear our voice. On this day we shall act as one, and we shall be ignored no more.
Now, another game that PS1 has also helped bring their servers back online would be Warhawk. This one had a huge cult following even after its release and after it shut down. People went out of their way to download Android software just to play online. This one is definitely one of those games that you had to have been there to really fully experience it. But nonetheless, this one has also helped kept alive using Discord and the online servers created by PS1. Now, these next games I'm going to be mentioning, you can play online, again, with the help of revived servers, but you can also play split screen on them. One of the better split screen experiences on the PlayStation 3 would be Resistance Fall of Man. A very unique setting for a first-person shooter, but you can play it 4-player split screen. So if you're picking up a PS3 with a few controllers and you want to play some couch, multiplayer, this game's got your back. It also has online servers that are working so you can play online, and it has a co-op campaign that you can play with a friend of yours. Yes, it's a 2-player campaign, but nonetheless, it is a lot of fun. If you pick up Resistance Fall of Man, might as well just pick up Resistance 2 and 3. Unfortunately, right now, I haven't heard anything about Resistance 2 or 3 servers coming back online, but nonetheless, I can only hope with future updates from PS1 and others, we could eventually get online servers working for those games as well. Now, while the first MotorStorm was single player only, unfortunately, you did get MotorStorm Pacific Rift, which added couch multiplayer. So you can play this with another friend, split screen. Another game that many people have probably heard of or have never taken a look at it would be Earth Defense Force Insect Armageddon. Now, while I have looked online and Insect Armageddon, a physical copy of this one, I did find it not tough to find, but it was fairly uncommon. It's not expensive yet, but I feel like it will be eventually a hidden gem that'll be seen on the PlayStation 3. Definitely pick this one up. The game just gets over the top and ridiculous. It's one of those that you just have to play to really experience it. Well, it isn't the best in its graphical department. This game definitely is one that's just turn off your brain, pick up a gun, start shooting some bugs, shooting some aliens, and have fun. Now, this one's going to be a little bit controversial, but if you have a PlayStation 3 and you want a 4-player brawler, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale is probably going to be the game for you. Now, again, if you're picking up the console and you're looking to kind of, have some couch co-op fun or just some competitive multiplayer just to play with your friends, duke it out a little bit, PlayStation All-Stars is your Smash Brothers for the console. While it didn't receive the best criticism at launch, it's definitely one of those that it's been out for a while. I think the sour taste of this game has kind of left everyone's mouth, and it's nice to kind of go back and look at it as, kind of like a hidden gem or just something that PlayStation did. You can tell that PlayStation really wanted this to kind of kick off a new series. While it didn't do its best job, nonetheless, it's still a lot of fun if you just turn off your brain and you play with some friends on the couch. Now, I can't not mention couch co-op without mentioning Little Big Planet 1 and 2. But like I said earlier, you also have Resistance 1 Fall of Man, along with its 2 sequels, Resistance 2 and 3. Right now, I'm not sure if they have the online working for these games yet, but nonetheless, it's still a very good series you guys should invest in and put on your PlayStation 3. If you like puzzle platformers, Portal 2 is probably the best option for you. This one also has a co-op mode and a standalone single player mode, so it's like you're getting 2 stories for the price of 1. Continuing the co-op or split screen storyline games, you also have Killzone 3. Like I mentioned earlier, Killzone, the entire series actually, is probably one of those series, like I said, you need to have it on your PlayStation. Everybody has it. Everybody on PlayStation has played it, at least mostly everybody. But nonetheless, the third one has a killer soundtrack and a really good conclusion to the overall Killzone trilogy. But let us not forget that Time Crisis 4 is also available on the PlayStation 3, along with Gran Turismo 5. Gran Turismo 5 being one of the top tier racing simulators that came out during that decade. Both of these games support 2-player modes, so you'll have some more fun with some friends. But let us not forget the great library of fighting games that, this generation of consoles also introduced. Some of these were best played on the PlayStation 3. You got games like Soul Calibur 4, Street Fighter 4, Mortal Kombat The Complete Edition that includes exclusive character Kratos from God of War. We got BlazBlue, and my all-time favorite fighting game on the PlayStation 3, Tekken 6. You know, of all the fighting games on the PlayStation 3, I found myself always playing Tekken 6 with a lot of my friends. It was probably one of the more fun fighting games out there, right next to Mortal Kombat, the Complete Edition. It was still very arcadey, and with a huge roster of characters, you'll never get tired of just picking and choosing or just kind of rotating out characters just to test them out. Now, I've mentioned the first-person shooters, I mentioned the fighting games, I've mentioned some platformers on here, but what about the JRPGs? Well, the PlayStation 3 was no stranger to JRPGs. While during this time there weren't that many, there are some here I can recommend you. For instance, we have the Tales series, Tales of Exilia and the Tales of Symphonia, both games, one that was originally on the Wii and GameCube, got a remaster on the PlayStation 3. You can check these out. This one is probably the best way to play the game, while I've heard others say that the better ways would be to play the originals on their original platforms. I do believe that the Tales of Symphonia games on the PlayStation 3, I think they're just fine. The only gripe I probably would have, or other people have, is that it runs at 30 frames a second, but I mean, come on, like it's okay. Next up, we also have a Star Ocean 4. The Last Hope. On the PlayStation 3, we got exclusive stuff like the Japanese voices. So on this one, they did release Star Ocean as the international version on the PS3, while you could get on the 360. I believe that one is the one that's missing the Japanese voices. So here, you'll be able to play it with all the content that was released over there in Japan. And then we also have one of my favorite games, or favorite JRPGs, that's very strategic-like, and does require a lot of thinking, and it makes you think about what your next move is. And that game is very, very underrated. It is Resonance of Fate. Now, Resonance of Fate was one that I did pick up a little bit late in the PS3's life cycle, but nonetheless, it was a really great JRPG. Me and my sister would play this game, and we actually worked together to kind of beat this game. It is very difficult, very challenging. You might have to look up some tutorials, but nonetheless, when you do figure it out, it is very satisfying. If you haven't played Resonance of Fate, definitely check it out on the PS3. The PS3 is the only spot where you can buy a hard copy. They did release a 4K version on the PlayStation 4 and 5, but like I said, if you want that physical copy, the PlayStation 3 is the way to go. PlayStation 3 also got a lot of third-party support. We have Tomb Raider, Underworld, Turok, Lollipop Chainsaw, which if you haven't played, you should play it. I got both the Japanese and the American versions. The Japanese version, I believe, was a little bit cheaper at the time, because the one that was released here on the US was slightly more expensive. I think it was like running at like 90 bucks at the time, and the Japanese one was only running about 40. Both games are the same. I haven't really seen a difference other than the cover arts on the game, but nonetheless, it was a really good, third-party game. Slay some zombies with a chainsaw. You have a cheerleader with her boyfriend's head attached to her hip. There's a lot of fan service in this game. We also got the Call of Juarez games, one in particular, Bound in Blood, but then we also got a trilogy that has not left this generation of consoles, and that is the Dead Space series. You got Dead Space 1, 2, and 3. Dead Space 2 being my personal favorite, but you can't beat the classic Dead Space 1. While we did get a remake of Dead Space 1 on the PS5, I highly recommend those who haven't played the original Dead Space go back and play it on the PS3. It's just as good, and slightly, it's not my nostalgia speaking. I've really had a lot of time to think about it because I've played and beaten both games. The one on the PS3 has a very, very darker atmosphere, very dark, and it's more eerie. While I do appreciate the remake, and I think they did a banger job, the Dead Space original release on the PS3 and the Xbox 360 is probably, in my opinion, like top tier horror, and it still looks very good to this day, along with its sequel, Dead Space 2. Now, while Dead Space 3 was probably one that not a lot of us, really appreciated at the time, I did have a lot of fun with me and my friend Jess, who we did play through the campaign on co-op, and right now, the online for Dead Space 3 is still available. You can still buy the DLC in it. And while it's not a very great solo experience, I think playing it with a friend and enjoying the game together is probably the best way to play this game. Unfortunately, it is not split screen, so you do need a separate PlayStation 3. But nonetheless, you can still create lobbies online and you can still play with your friend online. So Dead Space 3, nice co-op adventure. Dead Space 1 and 2, horror classics. You gotta have them. Now, the best part about the PS3 is it's not region locked. So there are a lot of games that came out here right now that are very expensive, but they're cheaper on the Japanese version. One of those games is Shadows of the Damned. Yes, you can buy it on the 360, and I'm pretty sure you can find it, you know, if you want to go hunting for it out there in the wild. But Shadows of the Damned, I pulled in the Japanese version. You'll still get all the English voices. Another great game to own on your PS3. And last but not least, one of the greatest games that I've played as of recently and beat was Spec Ops: The Line. Spec Ops: The Line is a third-person squad-based shooter where you and your squad mates are going into the city of Dubai after, you know, a very, very disastrous sandstorm. I'm not going to spoil too much on this game because there is heavy story elements in there that I feel would be spoilerish. But if you haven't played Spec Ops: The Line, the PlayStation 3 right now, along with the 360, is the only place you'll be able to play it because they did unlist it from the Steam store. So if this is a game that you've been really wanting to play or, you know, been looking to buy, the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 is your last chance to play them. The online, while it does work, it is very dead. But if you have some friends and you guys get, you know, multiple copies of the game and you want to play online, this game is available with custom lobbies that you can create yourself. That about does it for this PlayStation 3 buying guide. I did try to include a vast variety of games for you guys to pick up or kind of look at, so you guys can kind of get an idea of what, you know, you're gonna buy on the PlayStation 3. Maybe you're gonna buy a bundle on eBay, maybe it's on Amazon, maybe you're getting one on Craigslist and you want some games to pick up for the system. These are some of the games that I personally recommend, but I know there are plenty of games that I haven't mentioned and maybe warrants a second part to this video where we can just talk about 10 more games or 15 more games on the PlayStation 3. I know I will eventually have to make another video talking about the multiple games that you should buy on the PlayStation Store before it closes down in the future, but I'd be here all day if I was going to include it in this video. I wanted to keep this short and simple. I didn't. I think I went a little bit overboard, but nonetheless, let me know what your favorite games on the PlayStation 3 was and what were your best memories from this console. This console is, we're almost 20 years old. We're getting there. A couple more years and we're going to be 20 years old on the PlayStation 3. Mine is still kicking. But let me know down in the comments section, what are some games you guys would want us to pick up? What are some of your recommendations on the PlayStation 3? And what do you guys want to see next? Whatever it is, comment below, let me know. And if you guys like this video, remember to hit that like button. And as always, when you guys are gaming, power up.